Imagine you're at the grocery store, right? And you pick up this bright red bottle. The label says in these massive, bold letters, fresh tomato ketchup.
Naturally, you'd think it's ketchup.
Right. So
Yeah.
you buy it, you take it home, pour it on your fries, but it tastes completely off, like totally wrong.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Yeah. And it isn't until you peel back the label and read the microscopic fine print on the back that you see these words. It says, fresh tomato ketchup is a registered brand name. This product contains no actual tomatoes.
Wow. That's incredibly deceptive.
Exactly. You'd feel totally manipulated, right?
Yeah.
You bought one thing, but you were, quietly fed something else entirely, all protected by a legal technicality.
Protected by the fine print.
Yeah. And today, we are taking that exact concept out of the grocery aisle and projecting it onto a 50-foot cinematic screen. So welcome to the deep dive. We have a genuinely fascinating mission today for you, the listener.
I really do.
We're dissecting the intersection of blockbuster cinema, political machinery, and mass psychology. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our source material today is a highly detailed, honestly incredibly viral YouTube critique by creator Dhruv Roth.
Right, the one analyzing that new film.
Yeah, he does a complete forensic analysis of a recently released Indian film called Dhurandhar 2,
Right.
which was directed by Aditya Dar.
Right. And before we really delve into the mechanics of this critique, it's vital to establish the ground rules here.
Definitely, it's a heavy topic.
Exactly. The source video we are analyzing contains some highly politically charged claims. It directly addresses the ruling BJP in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the creators of this film, essentially accusing them of producing orchestrated propaganda.
Which is a massive claim.
It is. So our goal in this deep dive is not to take a side. We are absolutely not here to endorse the political viewpoints of the video's creator, nor are we here to defend the film or the politicians involved.
Right, we're just laying out what the source says.
Precisely. We are simply going to impartially report the claims and the underlying mechanisms outlined in our source material. Our focus is strictly on the anatomy of media manipulation, like how narratives are built, how audiences are primed, and how reality can just be cinematically edited.
Yeah, we're basically looking under the hood of the persuasion machine. Because Rathi's core argument is that Dhurandhar 2 is not actually an entertainment film at all.
Right.
He argues it's, arguably the most expensive election advertisement ever produced.
Yeah.
And the genius of it, the truly unprecedented marketing victory here, is that the audience is actually paying 500 rupees a ticket to go sit in the theater and consume a campaign ad.
Which is, frankly, a marketer's ultimate fantasy.
Oh, totally.
In a standard political campaign, you have to spend millions to force people to watch your advertisement, before a YouTube video or during a TV commercial break.
Uh-huh.
But here, the target demographic is actively funding the campaign material themselves.
It's wild. And the source video brings the receipts to show this isn't just some fringe internet conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah, it really does. High-profile political figures, such as the Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Biswa Sarma, have publicly stated that the people going to watch this film are the ones who will vote for the ruling party.
He just said it out loud.
He did. And official political social media handles are actually utilizing the film's soundtrack as promotional material. So the line between a commercial movie and a taxpayer-funded campaign asset is, it's functionally non-existent at this point.
Which brings us directly back to our bottle of tomato ketchup and the fine print. Let's look at the film's legal disclaimer.
Ah, yes, the disclaimer.
You know the drill. You sit down in the theater, the lights dim, and that standard block of text flashes on the screen. The film claims to be a, quote, fictional work inspired by real events, and firmly states that any resemblance to actual persons is purely coincidental.
Right, purely coincidental.
Yeah, except the movie then immediately proceeds to use the real names, real faces, and real archival footage of actual living people, like Prime Minister Modi and the infamous gangster Dawood Ibrahim.
It acts as the ultimate legal cheat code, essentially.
But let me push back on that, though. If the audience is sitting in a theater, literally watching real news footage of a real sitting prime minister, does a tiny 5-second disclaimer actually protect the filmmaker in any meaningful legal sense? Or is this purely a psychological trick being played on the viewer?
It is overwhelmingly the latter. Legally, yeah, it provides a flimsy shield against defamation lawsuits. But psychologically, it performs a much more insidious function. It completely disarms your critical thinking faculties.
Oh, so?
Well, when your brain registers the word fiction, it relaxes. You aren't watching a hardened documentary, so you aren't fact-checking dates and policy outcomes. You're just in a passive state, ready to be entertained.
Right, you've got your popcorn, you're just chilling.
Exactly. But the creator brings up a brilliant psychological concept here to explain how the film takes advantage of that relaxed state, which is emotional priming.
This is the sweet cellar and the chili pepper analogy, right?
That is the one. So the video highlights the very opening scene of the film. It depicts a Sikh man being brutally burned alive in Pakistan over fabricated blasphemy charges, and he's surrounded by a mob chanting violently.
Gosh, that's heavy.
It is extremely graphic. Now, according to the critique, this highly graphic scene has absolutely zero impact on the actual plot of the film.
Wait, really? None at all?
None.
No.
It does not introduce our main characters. It does not move the narrative forward. If you were to cut it entirely, the structure of the movie remains identical.
So if it serves no narrative purpose, what is the, biological or psychological goal of putting it right at minute one?
The argument is that it's there purely to prime the audience with visceral anger and to stoke Hindu-Muslim tensions before the plot even begins.
Just getting the blood boiling right away.
Exactly. When you watch an innocent person being burned alive, your body physically reacts. Your heart rate elevates, your fight or flight response is triggered, and your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical part of your brain, takes a backseat to raw emotion.
And that's where the chili pepper comes in.
Right. The analogy Rathy uses is a sweet seller who forces you to eat a burning hot chili pepper first. Your mouth is on fire, you are in physical distress, and suddenly you are absolutely desperate to buy whatever sweet they are selling just to cool the burn.
Wow. So the filmmaker deliberately burns the audience's tongue with outrage.
Yes, making them perfectly primed to consume the ideological sweet, meaning the political propaganda that immediately follows.
That's intense. So once your heart rate is up and you are looking for a savior to fix that outrage, the film introduces his characters. But it does so with a really bizarre twist on the traditional hero-villain dynamic.
Oh, the Dawood Ibrahim scene?
Yeah. So the source points out a scene featuring the character based on Dawood Ibrahim, who is presented as India's most wanted gangster.
Mm-hmm.
And what is he doing in this scene? He's just sitting around his hideout, complaining to his associates about how Prime Minister's arrival has struck absolute terror into his crime syndicate.
Which is such a strange choice for a villain introduction.
Totally. To use the video's pop culture analogy, it's like if Thanos spent an entire Avengers movie just sitting in his chair, trembling, talking about how terrified he is of Spider-Man.
What's fascinating here is the sheer psychological effectiveness of that specific narrative reversal.
How do you mean?
Think about how persuasion works. If a hero stands on a mountain and shouts, "I am the greatest, I am incredibly effective," it feels cheap. It feels like transparent bragging.
Right, we roll our eyes at that.
Exactly. We naturally build a wall of resistance against it. But if the ultimate villain, the person who has every conceivable reason to hate the hero and want them to fail, is forced to admit how incredible and terrifying the hero is, that completely bypasses all our defensive filters.
Well, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't having the villain praise the hero just standard action movie writing? Like, every 1980s action movie does this to build up the protagonist's mythos. Why is this specifically a manipulative political tool rather than just a cheesy Hollywood trope?
That's a great question. It's because of the real-world target of the praise. I mean, in a Hollywood movie, John Wick is a fictional construct. The stakes are confined to the theater.
Right, nobody's voting for John Wick.
Exactly. But here, the hero being praised is a sitting prime minister facing an upcoming election. The audience subconsciously processes this and thinks, wow, if even the most dangerous terrorist in the world is terrified of this leader, he must be keeping us incredibly safe.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, the source argues that weaponizing the villain to validate the hero's effectiveness is a far more convincing psychological trick than having the politician praise themselves in a stump speech.
It's sneaky.
Very. The cinematic goal isn't actually to make the villain look scary. It is to subliminally sell the administrative effectiveness of the politician.
Man, the manipulation goes far beyond just giving characters heavy-handed dialogue, too. Here's where it gets really interesting. Rathy claims the film actively attempts to rewrite massive, verifiable geopolitical events to fit this narrative.
The foreign policy angle.
Yes. There is a character, an officer from the ISI, which is Pakistan's primary intelligence agency, named Major Iqbal. In the film, this ISI major claims that foreign powers, specifically the Americans, poured massive amounts of money into Indian civil society.
Right, into NGOs and media.
Exactly. NGOs, media outlets, universities, and quote-unquote socialists all as part of a grand international conspiracy to defeat Modi in the 2014 elections.
And then the video methodically brings the receipts to counter this fictionalized history. I mean, the creator lays out a timeline of actual documented events from that period.
Let's hear the timeline.
Well, for instance, in February 2014, 3 months before the election results were even announced, the U.S. ambassador met with Modi in Gujarat. This was a clear diplomatic signal that the United States was already preparing to work with his administration.
So not exactly a hostile takeover attempt.
Right. And furthermore, on the very day the election results were announced, President Barack Obama immediately called to congratulate him and invited him to the White House. This hardly paints the picture of a hostile foreign power desperately trying to block his ascent.
Yeah, Rathi even pulls a direct quote from a former head of Pakistan's ISI, Lieutenant General Asad Durrani, who explicitly stated in 2018 that the ISI actually preferred Modi to win the election.
Which is fascinating.
Right. The strategic logic being that they believed his specific brand of leadership would alter India's internal balance in a way that ultimately benefited Pakistan's geopolitical interests.
Yeah.
That is the exact polar opposite of what the film's fictional ISI character is claiming on screen.
Absolutely. And the financial data on foreign funding completely flicks the film's script as well.
Oh, right, the NGO funding.
Yeah, the video cites economic reports showing that between 2001 and 2012, millions of dollars in U.S. charity funding actually went to right-wing groups affiliated with the RSS.
And for context for you listening, the RSS is essentially the massive ideological parent organization of the current ruling party.
Exactly. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, U.S. federal relief funds were directed to right-wing organizations. So the massive flow of foreign money was not exclusively propping up the political opposition or liberal NGOs, as the cinematic narrative suggests.
So the filmmaker essentially took the real-world flow of international money and just inverted the recipient in the script to create a bogeyman.
That's the claim.
But an average listener might say, sure, a blockbuster movie exaggerated some foreign policy details for dramatic effect. We see that in spy thrillers all the time. Why does this specific alteration matter?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that is precisely where the danger lies, according to the source. This is not just harmless dramatic flair to make a movie more exciting.
Of the real-world impact.
The video argues that this specific fictional narrative, the idea that NGOs and civil society groups are merely foreign-funded tools of international espionage, is used to justify very real, very harsh domestic political crackdowns.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Since 2014, the government licenses of over 20,000 NGOs have been aggressively canceled.
Wow.
This includes massive, globally recognized humanitarian groups like Amnesty International, which had to completely halt its operations in India in 2020. It also includes environmental groups like Greenpeace.
Wow. So it provides a retroactive cinematic justification for a highly controversial real-world policy.
Yes.
By creating a fictional universe where every NGO is secretly funded by an enemy state to destroy the country, the audience leaves the theater thinking that shutting down Amnesty International was a matter of national survival rather than a suppression of civil society voices.
It's an incredibly potent way to launder a political policy through the guise of entertainment.
And it requires a certain level of audacity to rewrite foreign policy, because the average citizen doesn't have firsthand experience with U.S. ambassadors or ISI directors, right?
Right. It's far removed from their daily life.
But the psychological manipulation has to be vastly more sophisticated when you attempt to rewrite a domestic crisis that the viewers actually live through in their own neighborhoods. Which brings us to how the film handles the 2016 demonetization, the infamous note ban.
Oh, this part is staggering.
Yeah. The film portrays this incredibly disruptive, chaotic event as a brilliant surgical masterstroke of national security. It claims the Prime Minister enacted the ban specifically to stop Pakistan from sending 60,000 crore rupees, which is roughly $7 billion in fake currency, across the border to fund regional elections.
And the video's creator offers a rather sharp, illuminating analogy for this specific logic.
What was it?
He suggests that using demonetization to stop fake currency is like discovering a single mouse in your living room. And to solve the problem, you deliberately burn your entire house to the ground.
Man, that feels like a pretty apt description when you look at the hard economic data the video presents.
The RBI data, right.
Yeah, the creator pulls the Reserve Bank of India's own official annual report from the 2017 to 2018 fiscal year. When demonetization happened, wiping out 86% of the nation's currency overnight, 99.3% of the banned notes eventually returned to the banking system.
Which means the system was flush with the old, legitimate cash.
Exactly. And as for that massive waves of counterfeit money the film uses as its entire plot device, the RBI detected a total of only 43 crore rupees in fake currency.
43 crore.
Yes. That is a microscopic, almost statistically irrelevant fraction of the 60,000 crore, the $7 billion figure the film throws around to justify the policy.
And yet the film focuses entirely on this fictionalized victory while entirely erasing the catastrophic real-world cost.
Yeah, the human cost was awful.
It was. The source points to independent economic studies showing demonetization caused an immediate 3% drop in India's GDP, severely damaging the informal economy and small businesses. And tragically, over 80 people died.
80 people?
Yes. Citizens collapsing in massive, desperate queues outside banks, or suffering medical emergencies at ATMs because of the severe cash crisis. People were unable to pay for essential hospital treatments. I mean, it was a lived daily trauma for hundreds of millions of people.
Let me play devil's advocate again, though. If stopping $7 billion in counterfeit currency was truly the primary master-planned reason for the 2016 note ban, wouldn't the Prime Minister have proudly and loudly claimed credit for stopping this massive plot the moment it happened?
You would think so.
Right. I mean, political leaders universally love taking credit for national security victories. We see politicians take credit for stopping wars or executing cross-border strikes all the time. Why would an administration keep this specific monumental victory a total secret until a movie conveniently reveals it years later?
That is exactly the glaring logical discrepancy Rethi points out. If this sweeping success story were true, it would have been the headline of every political rally, every manifesto, and every news broadcast since 2016.
But it wasn't.
No, it wasn't, because the foundational economic data simply does not support it. And this brings us to a crucial rule of propaganda analysis. What the camera actively hides is often much more important than what it shows.
The sins of omission.
Precisely. The video highlights massive historical omissions in the film's timeline that simply do not fit the invincible strongman narrative being constructed.
Like what?
For example, the film completely ignores the Prime Minister's surprise, unannounced visit to Pakistan on Christmas Day in 2015 to meet their leadership.
Why erase that?
Because just 8 days later, the devastating Pathankot terror attack occurred, where militants from Pakistan attacked an Indian airbase.
I see.
Similarly, the film glosses over the tragic 2019 Pulwama attack, where 40 security personnel were killed, despite the source citing reports that there were 11 ignored intelligence inputs prior to the strike. Showing diplomatic failure or a lethal intelligence lapse shatters the illusion of infallible leadership that the ad is trying so hard to sell.
And when the film does decide to show real events, it allegedly alters them to the point of being entirely unrecognizable to anyone who watched the news.
This is the Atiq Ahmed part.
Yeah. The source brings up what is arguably the most disturbing claim in the entire critique, the cinematic portrayal of the murder of Atiq Ahmed. For context, in April 2023, Atiq Ahmed, who was a politician and convicted criminal, was shot dead on live television while in police custody, heavily surrounded by media and law enforcement.
Everyone saw it happen.
Yes. But the film portrays this chaotic, live TV assassination as a clean surgical intelligence operation being smugly watched on a monitor by the villainous Major Iqbal in Pakistan.
And the video raises two massive, undeniable factual holes with this cinematic portrayal.
Okay, what are they?
First, the real person that the character Major Iqbal is based on died in 2011, so he couldn't possibly be watching a live feed of an assassination in 2023.
Oh, wow. He's watching it from beyond the grave.
Right. Second, and vastly more importantly, after Atiq Ahmed was killed, the Indian parliament paid formal tribute to him, officially observing a moment of silence.
We really need to pause and frame that universally, so the sheer cognitive dissonance makes sense to you listening. Imagine any government publicly holding a solemn moment of silence for a notorious criminal on a Tuesday, and then a movie comes out on Wednesday claiming that the very same government secretly ordered a hit squad to execute him on live television.
The contradiction is staggering.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. The filmmaker essentially needed the villain to be alive to watch the hero's triumph, even if it meant resurrecting a dead man. And they needed to reframe a colossal law and order failure. I mean, an assassination occurring in police custody on live broadcast as a slick, intentional spy operation.
That's so bold.
Which raises an important question about the psychological core of the video's entire thesis. What we are really analyzing here is gaslighting on a mass societal scale.
Okay, explain the mechanics of mass gaslighting in this specific context. Like, how does it work on an audience of millions?
Gaslighting is a psychological manipulation tactic where an abuser, or in this case, a piece of highly produced media, systematically tries to convince you that your own memory, your own perception of reality, is fundamentally flawed.
Making you doubt yourself.
Exactly. Rathi makes a profound point. It is one thing for a historical epic to rewrite the history of 1947. Most of the audience wasn't alive then. We rely on textbooks and historians to tell us what happened, but this film is actively rewriting events from 2016, 2019, and 2023.
Events the audience literally lived through.
Yes. The viewer stood in those chaotic ATM lines during demonetization. The viewer watched the breaking news coverage of the Pulwama attack. The viewer saw the live, unedited, chaotic footage of the 2023 shooting on their own television screens. The film looks the audience dead in the eye and tells them, what you lived through, what you saw with your own eyes, was not the real story. The real story was a secret master plan reality that only our leader understood, and your own memory is simply wrong.
That is just chilling. When that level of gaslighting is executed with a massive budget, high-quality cinematography, and swelling dramatic music, it is incredibly potent. It weaponizes self-doubt. It tells the viewer to discard their own lived experience and trust the fabricated cinematic narrative instead.
That is deeply unsettling. It's like reality is being edited in real time and we're paying for the privilege of watching it happen.
We're buying the tickets.
Yeah. And okay, as a brief aside, I have to point out something brilliantly ironic about our source material itself.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Right. The YouTube creator, Dhruv Rathi, spends all this time deconstructing how Dhurandhar 2 uses emotional priming, narrative flow, and psychological hooks to persuade and manipulate an audience. And then, right in the middle of this meticulous video, he smoothly uses those exact same persuasive narrative-building techniques to pitch his own 4,000 rupee YouTube blueprint course.
It is so smooth.
It is a masterclass in proving that narrative building is a universal tool. The mechanics of persuasion are entirely neutral. It just depends on whether you're using them to sell a political ideology, a cinematic universe, or an online masterclass.
It perfectly illustrates the reality that human beings are fundamentally wired for narrative. I mean, we are all susceptible to a well-told story, especially when it targets our deep-seated emotions, our fears, or our aspirations. The architecture of persuasion doesn't change, only the payload does.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? We've covered legal ketchup loopholes, Thanos analogies, the rewriting of billions of dollars in fake currency, and mass societal gaslighting.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. To summarize today's deep dive for you, the listener, whether you are analyzing a blockbuster film, a fiery political speech, or even a highly produced YouTube critique, understanding the mechanics of how information is delivered to your brain is vital.
Absolutely vital.
Recognizing emotional priming feeling, that metaphorical chili pepper burning your tongue and making you reach for the ideological sweets. Spotting the strategic sins of omission. Asking yourself what the camera is deliberately not showing you. And identifying mass gaslighting when a piece of media demands that you stop trusting your own memory and lived experience.
Because these are no longer just academic concepts.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
They're the necessary everyday survival skills for anyone who wants to be a critical consumer of information in the modern world.
And I want to leave you with a final thought, a provocation directly raised by the source video itself. We have just spent this time analyzing how real archival footage, spliced together with fictional dialogue and hidden under a flimsy legal disclaimer, can be utilized to elevate a political figure to mythic status. But Rathi asks a chilling question. What happens when the pendulum inevitably swings? What would happen if these exact same cinematic techniques were used by a different filmmaker with different funding to paint a national political party or a specific community as entirely anti-national?
Oh, wow.
If a creator can take real clips of a leader, splice them with fictional treasonous dialogue, slap an inspired by real events disclaimer on the poster, and release it to millions of eager viewers, where does the manipulation end?
That is a terrifying thought. It's basically a blueprint for total reality distortion.
It really is. In an era where anyone with a sufficient budget and a legal loophole can create highly produced, emotionally manipulative media, how long until the foundational lines between historical record, popcorn entertainment, and outright political warfare vanish completely?
Yeah, that's something to chew on. Next time you're at the theater, or even just the grocery store, and you see that bright red fresh tomato ketchup label, remember to read the fine print. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay critical, and we'll catch you next time.